Hello and welcome to this episode of World Anvil. Today we're looking at organizations. Now, this is arguably one of the most critical spaces in all of the World Anvil's templates. And the reason for that is organizations help to set the tone for your environment very, very quickly, very clearly, and give the participant, the audience, the viewer, the player, an insight into just what they can expect coming up. So let's have a look at this template here called organization. Now, as it says there, kingdoms, baronies, churches of gods, organized religions, secret societies, armies of ruthless mercenaries, knight and wizardly orders, territorial and non-territorial. So this really is a fully comprehensive space. And when you look at the template, there's things like slogans, mottos, axioms, flags, alternative names, the demonym, which is, if you're from France, you're French, as the example says. So the demonym is what would you call people from Braxia. My personal setting, you'd call them Braxians, I suppose. And it goes deeper than that, doesn't it? It goes all the way through to the very, very basic organizations within your world. So how do you set them up? Well, one of the ways of doing that is to physically look at the geography. So if you have a map of the area that these organizations are based in, you can have a look at those organizations and say, right, well, who are their neighbors? Who are they working with and who are they working against? In the cases of organizations that have no particular enemies and things like that, then your focus starts to come on to who can they trade with, who can they deal with, and how do they deal with those people? That starts to raise a lot more interesting questions, and what it does is it helps motivate you to understand how the organization actually operates outside of itself. Far too often, we have these organizations that are created, but they're created in isolation from one another. So what that means is that you have this really cool pirate gang, but then you actually have to start asking questions. Well, how do they get their supplies? Where do their cannonballs come from? Where does their gunpowder come from? Oh, that starts to come from that city over there, right? So it starts to expand your idea. It starts to develop your idea, which means that the pirates need to have someone who goes out and deals with that sort of person, or goes and buys the gunpowder secretly disguised as a washerwoman who just needs to have 400 pounds of highly explosive gunpowder. You know, so the idea is that you start to look at the affiliations, the organizations that this organization is likely to work with in order to help define or redefine your organization to make them feel more like a living, breathing entity rather than just a representative of an idea. That is something that we like to do with organizations, and it's not a bad thing, is we say, right, well, this organization is supposed to be bureaucratic and stuffy, and I want to get this real old school sense of just very plodding and not having moved with the times. That's fine, but how then do you express that in your environment? How do you express that in your campaign? Well, it's oftentimes through the minutiae, through the way that they deal with others, that we start to see exactly who and how they are. How do they deal with characters who represent different organizations? You need to know that in order for their reaction to be genuine, rather than to just be a generic kind of, oh, well, stuffy people are always slow and somber, or they need a form, or they need a this. You can then start to see, okay, well, you can actually jump the queue because your organization is favored by ours. Automatically, that creates a history, it creates a link, it creates a very different type of organization. So it's something to really, really look at. And of course, you've then got to look at the purpose. What is the purpose of this organization within your world? Now, a lot of game masters that I've spoken to, my personal experience, say that they actually start with their organizations at the very beginning before they do anything else in their campaign. That's not how I do it, but a lot of people do it that way. So they can look at the organizations and they can say, all right, this is what my world is populated with. This is what my galaxy is populated with. I've got all these different organizations and this is how they work with one another. So how is that going to be impacted when my characters, when my audience goes through that? How are they going to experience that? And that's absolutely fine. And then from there, they start to break it down into smaller and smaller steps. The way I do it is I do it the other way around. I start with my idea, with my narrative, and I go, right, this is the story that I want to tell. Now, what organizations do I need to support that? How do I use these organizations to continue to prescribe my themes within my environment, within my setting, and so on. So it's two very different approaches. Neither one is more correct than the other. It's about finding what works for you, really. But organizations are a particularly powerful way to create some very strong, simple statements, as well as to be able to express your themes, to express your ideas, and to express the thoughts that you happen to have on organizations of, say, a religious nature, or a political nature, or a mercenary nature. So, organizations, there's a lot more to it than at first you think. And the more that you add about how they deal with others around them, the richer and the more luxuriant, I suppose. It sounds like a hairstyle commercial, doesn't it? But the richer and the greater depth and history your organizations will have, and that ultimately will make your world feel like it is a real space rather than just some stamped out cookie cutter type of shapes. Anyway, until next time, enough mixed metaphors from me. Keep your thoughts together on World Anvil. Keep your thoughts flowing. Find inspiration for yourself. And until next time, light up the forge.